The fluorescent lights of Romano's bistro buzzed like dying wasps above my head, casting a sickly yellow glow over the half-empty restaurant. My feet throbbed in the cheap flats I'd bought from the discount store 3 months ago, the same ones whose soles were now so thin I could feel every crack in the tile floor. The smell of garlic and burnt olive oil clung to my uniform, a black button-down that had seen better days, its fabric worn soft from too many washes in the building's communal laundry machines. I was invisible here. That's what I'd learned in the 8 months since I'd started waiting tables. People looked through you, not at you. Their eyes would scan the room for their server, landing on you without really seeing. You were just a vessel for their food, their drinks, their complaints. Excuse me? Hello? A sharp snap of fingers cut through the dinner chatter. I turned toward table 7, tucking a strand of dark hair behind my ear. 3 young men sat there, mid-20s, dressed in designer labels that screamed new money. The one who'd snapped his fingers wore a smirk that made my stomach clench. Yes, can I help you? I approached with my practiced smile, the one that never quite reached my eyes anymore. Finally. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. We've been waiting forever. You deaf or something? His friends laughed, harsh, entitled sounds that echoed off the exposed brick walls. I apologize for the wait. What can I get you, gentlemen? I pulled out my notepad, pen poised. Gentlemen? The blonde one snorted. You hear that, Marcus? She called us gentlemen. Marcus, the finger snapper, looked me up and down with deliberate slowness that made my skin crawl. What's your name, sweetheart? Emma. The word came out softer than I intended. Emma. He drew it out, mocking. Well, Emma, here's what you're going to do. You're going to bring us 3 whiskeys, the expensive kind, not the well shit. And maybe try to look a little happier about it. That face you're making? Not good for tips. Heat crept up my neck, but I swallowed it down. I needed this job. The rent was due in 5 days, and I was already short. Right away. As I turned, I heard one of them say, Bet she can't even afford to eat here, followed by more laughter. My hands shook slightly as I approached the bar. Danny, our bartender, caught my eye and frowned. You okay? Fine. I wasn't fine. Nothing had been fine since David left, since the eviction notice, since my mother's medical bills started piling up. But fine was what you said when you couldn't afford to fall apart. The whiskeys were top shelf, $30 a glass. I arranged them carefully on my tray, along with 3 water glasses, and made my way back to table 7. The restaurant had grown quieter. It was nearly 9 o'clock, and most of the dinner crowd had cleared out. Here you are. I set the drinks down with practiced precision. Can I get you anything? Marcus grabbed his glass and tilted it deliberately, spilling amber liquid across the white tablecloth and onto my uniform. The whiskey was cold against my skin, soaking through the fabric. Oops! His eyes glittered with malice. Guess you're as clumsy as you are poor. His friends erupted in laughter again. The third one, who'd been quiet until now, pulled out his phone. This is gold. Hey, say something for the camera, waitress. My vision blurred at the edges. Not from tears. I'd learned not to cry at work, but from pure exhaustion, from the weight of every humiliation I'd endured. Every bill I couldn't pay, every night I'd gone to bed hungry so there'd be food for breakfast. I'll get you another drink. My voice came out hollow. Don't bother. Marcus stood, towering over me. This place is trash anyway. Service is terrible. The help is incompetent. The help? The words escaped before I could stop them. I'm a person. I'm trying to... You're trying. He stepped closer, and I could smell cologne that probably cost more than my monthly rent. You're failing. Look at you. What are you, 30? Working as a waitress in this dump? What kind of life is that? 28. I was 28, but I felt ancient. That's enough. The voice came from behind me, deep, quiet, and somehow more commanding than any shout could be. I turned. The man who'd spoken sat alone at table 12, partially hidden in the corner booth I'd somehow missed during my earlier rounds. The dim lighting there created shadows that seemed to cling to him, but I could make out a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, the kind with no visible label because it didn't need one. His hands rested on the table, large, strong hands with a silver ring on the right index finger that caught the light. He hadn't been there before. I was certain of it. Or had I been so lost in my own misery that I'd missed him? "Excuse me?" Marcus spun around, his bravado faltering slightly. The man stood, and the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted. It was subtle. The way the remaining patrons seemed to quiet. The way Danny behind the bar straightened his posture. The way even the kitchen sounds seemed to dim. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair styled just carelessly enough to look intentional, but it was his eyes that made my breath catch. Dark, almost black, and completely unreadable. I said that's enough. He moved with the fluid grace of someone utterly confident in their body, in their space, in their right to exist exactly where they were. As he approached, I noticed the slight bulge under his jacket on the left side. Subtle, but there. A shadow moved near the restaurant entrance. I caught a glimpse of another man in a dark suit, hand near his own jacket. Security. This man had security. "Who the hell are you?" Marcus tried to sound tough, but there was an edge of uncertainty now. The stranger ignored him completely. Instead, he looked at me. Really looked at me. In a way that made me feel simultaneously exposed and seen. His gaze traveled from my face to the whiskey stain spreading across my uniform, and something flickered in those dark eyes. Anger, maybe. Or something colder. "Are you hurt?" His voice was directed at me, only at me, as if the 3 men didn't exist at all. No, I'm fine." The same lie, but it sounded different now. He nodded slowly, then turned his attention to Marcus. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper, yet somehow more terrifying than any shout. "You're going to apologize to the lady." "Lady?" Marcus laughed, but it sounded forced. "Dude, she's just a—" The stranger moved. One moment he was standing 3 feet away. The next, he was in Marcus's space, close enough that Marcus had to tilt his head back slightly to maintain eye contact. The stranger hadn't touched him, hadn't raised his voice, but Marcus went pale. "Choose your next words very carefully." The stranger's tone was conversational, almost friendly, which made it more menacing, "because they will determine whether you walk out of here tonight or whether my associates help you to your car. And I promise you, the latter option will be far less pleasant." The restaurant was utterly silent now. Even the kitchen had gone quiet. Marcus swallowed hard. His friends had gone still. Their earlier bravado evaporated. "Look, man, we were just joking around. Apologize." 2 words, flat and final. "I'm sorry." Marcus's eyes flicked to me, then away. "Okay? I'm sorry." To her. "Look at her when you apologize." Marcus turned to face me properly, and I saw real fear in his eyes now. "I'm sorry. I was out of line. It won't happen again." The stranger waited a beat, then stepped back. "Pay your bill. Include a 30% tip, then leave." They didn't argue. Marcus threw a handful of bills on the table. More than 30%, I noticed, and the 3 of them hurried toward the exit. The blonde one stumbled on his way out, nearly tripping over his own feet. And then it was just me and this stranger in a half-empty restaurant that suddenly felt too small. He turned to face me fully, and I got my first clear look at him. He was younger than I'd initially thought, mid-30s perhaps, with strong features that bordered on harsh. A thin scar cut through his left eyebrow, barely visible but there. His suit was impeccable, but there was something about the way he wore it. Not like armor, but like a second skin. This was a man who was dangerous and didn't need to prove it. "Are you okay?" he asked again, gentler this time. "Yes." "Thank you. You didn't have to." "I did." He glanced down at my soaked uniform. "You'll need to change. Is there somewhere you can—" "It's fine. It'll dry." I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly aware of how the wet fabric clung to my skin. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Without a word, he shrugged off his suit jacket and held it out to me. The lining was silk, dove gray, and it looked like it cost more than everything in my apartment combined. "I can't—" "Please." The word was soft, but there was something in his tone that made it impossible to refuse. I took the jacket. It was warm from his body heat and smelled like cedar and something darker, something that made my pulse quicken in a way I didn't want to examine. When I slipped it on, it enveloped me completely, the sleeves hanging past my hands. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emma. Emma Sullivan." Emma. The way he said it was nothing like how Marcus had. No mockery, no condescension. Just my name, spoken carefully, like something precious. "I'm Mr. Marchetti!" Danny called from the bar, his voice slightly too loud, slightly too cheerful. "Your usual table is ready. Can I get you started with anything?" Marchetti. The name pinged something in my memory, but I couldn't place it. The stranger, Marchetti, nodded toward Danny but kept his eyes on me. In a moment. Then to me, "Have you eaten tonight?" The question caught me off guard. "No, but I'm working. I can't." "You're taking your break." He gestured toward his corner booth. "Sit." It wasn't really a request, but it wasn't quite a command either. Something in between. And before I could think better of it, before my rational mind could catalog all the reasons this was a terrible idea, I found myself nodding. As he guided me toward the booth, his hand hovering near the small of my back. Not quite touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat. I caught Danny's expression. The bartender's face had gone carefully neutral. The look of someone who'd just seen something significant, but knew better than to comment. I slid into the booth, and Marchetti sat across from me, up close, in better lighting. I could see more details. The gold cufflinks engraved with initials I couldn't make out. The expensive watch peeking from beneath his sleeve. The way his collar was crisp despite the late hour. "You work here often?" His question pulled me from my observation. "Every night. Double shifts on weekends." Something flickered across his face. Concern, maybe, or calculation. "That's a lot." I shrugged, pulling his jacket tighter around myself. Bills don't pay themselves. A waiter appeared. Michael, who usually worked the other side of the restaurant. He looked nervous as he set down a glass of red wine in front of Marchetti, and a menu in front of me. "The lady will have the filet mignon, medium rare, with the truffle risotto," Marchetti said, without consulting the menu. Then, to me, "Unless you prefer something else?" I should have been annoyed at his presumption. I should have insisted on ordering for myself, or better yet, excused myself, and gone back to work. Instead, I heard myself say, "That sounds perfect." "And tiramisu for dessert," he added. "The real kind, not the frozen garbage most places serve." Michael nodded rapidly and disappeared. "You eat here often?" I asked, echoing his earlier question. "Often enough." His fingers traced the rim of his wine glass, a idle movement that drew my eyes to his hands again. "I own the building." Of course he did. That explained the security, the deference from the staff, the way he'd moved through the space like he owned it. Because he literally did. "I should get back to work," I said, even though I made no move to leave. "Your shift ends in 30 minutes. Stay." How did he know when my shift ended? But even as the question formed, I knew the answer. Men like him made it their business to know things. "Why?" The word slipped out. "Why did you help me? Why are you doing this?" He was quiet for a long moment, studying me with those unfathomable dark eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice was low enough that I had to lean forward to hear him. "Because," he said, "I know what it's like to be underestimated. And because—" He paused, something shifting in his expression. "Because you reminded me of someone." Before I could ask who, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor changed, became colder, sharper, all business. "Excuse me." He stood abruptly and walked toward the back of the restaurant, phone to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian too quiet for me to catch. I sat there, wrapped in his jacket that smelled like cedar and danger, and wondered what the hell I'd just gotten myself into. The filet mignon arrived exactly 4 minutes after Marchetti disappeared into the back hallway, still on his phone. Michael set it down with trembling hands, his eyes darting toward the empty seat across from me. "Is everything all right?" I asked. "Fine, miss. Everything's fine." He refilled my water glass. I hadn't touched the wine, and vanished before I could say anything else. I stared at the plate. The meat was perfectly seared, the risotto gleaming with butter and flecked with black truffle. My stomach growled traitorously. When was the last time I'd eaten something that wasn't ramen or day-old bread from the bakery down the street? But eating felt wrong somehow. This whole situation felt wrong. Men like Marchetti didn't just help waitresses. They didn't give them their jackets or order them expensive dinners. There was always a price, always an expectation. I was pushing the risotto around my plate when he returned. His expression was unreadable, but there was a tightness around his eyes that hadn't been there before. "I apologize," he said, sliding back into the booth. "Business. At 9:30 at night? My business doesn't keep traditional hours." He noticed my untouched food. "You're not eating." "I'm not really hungry." A lie. I was starving. His eyes narrowed slightly. "You're not comfortable." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "I don't understand what this is, what you want." "What I want," he repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. "I want you to eat the food I ordered for you. I want you to stop looking at me like I'm going to hurt you. And I want—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "I want those boys to never speak to another human being that way again. You can't control what other people do." A ghost of a smile crossed his face, humorless. "You'd be surprised what I can control, Emma." The way he said my name again, careful, deliberate, made something flutter in my chest. I picked up my fork and took a bite of the risotto. It was incredible, creamy and rich with an earthy depth I'd never tasted before. Despite myself, I took another bite, then another. "Good?" he asked. "It's perfect." I meant it. He watched me eat with an intensity that should have made me uncomfortable, but somehow didn't. There was something almost protective in his gaze, like he was making sure I actually consumed every bite. "Tell me about yourself," he said after a moment. "There's not much to tell. I work here. I have an apartment in the Bronx. I stopped, unsure how much to reveal. But something about the darkness in his eyes, the way he'd stood up for me without expecting anything in return, made me continue. "My husband left 6 months ago. Cleaned out our joint account and disappeared. I came home one day and he was just gone." Marchetti's expression didn't change, but his hand curled into a fist on the table. "What was his name?" "David. David Sullivan." I laughed bitterly. Though I doubt that matters now. It matters. 2 words, weighted with meaning I couldn't decipher. "Why would it matter to you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then set it aside. "You're alone then? No family?" "My mother's in a nursing home upstate. Early onset Alzheimer's. She doesn't remember me most days. The admission hurt, the way it always did. The bills are substantial. And your father?" "Dead. Heart attack when I was 17. Marchetti nodded slowly, absorbing this information like it was crucial data he needed to file away. "You're working yourself to death to pay for a mother who doesn't remember you, and to survive in a city that's trying to crush you." Put like that, it sounded pathetic. "I'm doing what I have to do. There are other options." "Like what?" "I have a bachelor's degree in English literature. Do you know how useless that is? I can't afford to go back to school. I can't afford anything except this." I gestured to my stained uniform under his jacket. "So, yes, I work here. I smile at people who treat me like dirt. I go home to an apartment with broken heating and roaches, and I survive. That's what I do." Silence stretched between us. I shouldn't have said all that. I shouldn't have revealed so much to a stranger, no matter how much he'd helped me. "I'm sorry," I muttered. "You didn't ask for my life story." "I did, actually." He leaned back, studying me with that unreadable expression. "And I'm going to help you. I don't need charity. It's not charity. It's—" His phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, and his jaw tightened. "I have to go. Finish your meal. The tiramisu will be out shortly." He stood, and panic flared in my chest. "Wait. Your jacket, keep it. I'll get it back." He pulled out a wallet, black leather, thick with cash, and set $500 bills on the table. "For your trouble tonight. I can't take that." "You can. You will." He buttoned his shirt cuffs, a gesture that seemed almost ritualistic. "I'll be in touch, Emma. You don't have my number." That ghost of a smile again. "I'll find you. And then he was gone, moving through the restaurant with that same fluid grace. I watched as he met the man in the dark suit near the door. His security, I realized, and they exited together. Through the window, I saw a black SUV with tinted windows pull up immediately, as if it had been circling, waiting. I looked down at the money on the table. $500. That would cover most of my rent. Miss Sullivan, Michael appeared, holding a plate with the promised tiramisu. Mr. Marchetti insisted you have dessert. I took it numbly, still processing everything that had just happened. Danny came over after Michael left, sliding into the booth across from me. You okay? Who is he, Danny? Really? The bartender glanced around, making sure no one was in earshot. You really don't know? Would I be asking if I did? He leaned forward, voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Antonio Marchetti, they call him the Wolf. Well, let's just say he's not someone you want to owe favors to. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? I mean he runs half the businesses in this part of the city. And when I say runs, I don't mean he's a landlord. Danny trailed off, choosing his words carefully. He's connected, Emma. To people you don't want to be connected to. You're saying he's in the Mafia. Danny's silence was answer enough. I looked down at the jacket I was still wearing, at the money on the table, at the half-eaten filet mignon. My stomach churned. Why would someone like that help me? I don't know. But Emma? Danny's expression was grave. Be careful. Men like Marchetti don't do anything without a reason, and they always collect on their debts. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my studio apartment, staring at the water-stained ceiling, wearing Antonio Marchetti's jacket because I couldn't bring myself to take it off. It shouldn't have fit me, but somehow it felt like it had been made for me. Warm, protective, safe. What a joke. The man was apparently a mobster, and here I was, wrapped in his clothes like a child with a security blanket. But he'd stood up for me when no one else had. He'd looked at me like I mattered, like I was worth something more than the minimum wage and tips I scraped together every night. At 3 a.m, I finally got up and counted the money he'd left. 5 crisp $100 bills, real and solid in my hands. I could pay rent. I could buy groceries that weren't expired. I could possibly breathe for just a moment. I tucked the money into the coffee can I kept hidden in the back of my freezer, the only place I trusted in this apartment, and went back to bed. My phone rang at 7:30, jolting me from the thin sleep I'd finally fallen into. Unknown number. Hello? Emma Sullivan. A woman's voice, professional and cool. Yes. This is Miranda Chen, from Hartley & Associates. We're a legal firm representing Mr. Antonio Marchetti. He's requested that we contact you regarding a potential employment opportunity. I sat up so fast my head spun. I'm sorry, what? Mr. Marchetti would like to offer you a position as his personal assistant. The salary is competitive, $150,000 annually, plus benefits, including full health insurance and a housing stipend. $150,000. I made $23,000 a year at the restaurant before tips. I don't understand. I'm not qualified to be anyone's assistant. I'm a waitress. Mr. Marchetti is aware of your current employment. He believes you have the qualities he's looking for. Are you interested? Every instinct I had screamed that this was wrong, that this was dangerous, that I should hang up and block the number and never look back. But I thought of my mother in that nursing home, of the bills piling up, of Marcus's face as he'd humiliated me. I thought of Antonio Marchetti's dark eyes, and the way he'd said my name. What would the job entail? Managing Mr. Marchetti's schedule, handling correspondence, accompanying him to business meetings. Standard assistant duties. If you're interested, he'd like to meet with you this afternoon at 2 o'clock. I can text you the address. I have a shift at the restaurant. Mr. Marchetti will speak with your manager. Consider yourself off duty as of this morning. He owns the building, Miss Sullivan. He can do whatever he wants. A pause. So, are you interested? I should have said no. I should have hung up. Yes, I heard myself say. I'm interested. The address Miranda texted me was in Midtown, a glass tower that scraped the sky. The lobby was all marble and steel, intimidatingly expensive. A security guard checked my ID and directed me to a private elevator that required a keycard to operate. Mr. Marchetti is expecting you, the guard said, handing me a temporary card. Penthouse level. The elevator was glass on one side, offering a dizzying view of Manhattan as it climbed. My reflection stared back at me from the polished steel. I'd worn my only nice outfit, a gray pencil skirt and white blouse I'd bought for job interviews years ago. I'd returned Antonio's jacket, having it dry cleaned first, wrapped carefully in tissue paper. It sat in a garment bag in my hands now. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse apartment that made my entire building look like a shoebox. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered 360 views of the city. The furniture was modern and minimal, all clean lines and expensive fabrics. Original artwork hung on the walls. I recognized a Rothko, or at least a very convincing replica. Antonio stood by the windows, phone to his ear, speaking in that same rapid Italian. He'd shed his suit jacket. His white shirt was rolled up at the sleeves, revealing forearms that were more muscular than I'd expected. When he saw me, he ended the call immediately. "Emma, thank you for coming. I brought your jacket." I held it out like a peace offering. He took it but barely glanced at it, setting it aside on a nearby chair. "How did you sleep?" The question was so unexpected, so personal, that I answered honestly. I didn't. Neither did I. He moved closer, and I caught that scent again. Cedar, and something darker. "I've been thinking about you." My heart hammered. "Mr. Marchetti." "Antonio. Please, Antonio." His name felt strange on my tongue, too intimate. "I don't understand why you're doing this. The job offer, the money, I told you. You reminded me of someone. Who?" He was quiet for a long moment, studying my face with an intensity that made me want to look away. But I held his gaze, refusing to be cowed. "My mother," he finally said. "She was a waitress too. Worked herself to exhaustion trying to provide for me and my sister after my father died. She took abuse from customers, from managers, from everyone. And no one ever stood up for her. No one ever made it stop. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Just accept the job." He moved to a bar cart and poured 2 glasses of water, handing one to me. "I need an assistant I can trust. Someone who isn't connected to my usual world. Someone who's loyal." "You don't know if I'm loyal. You just met me. I know enough." He took a sip of his water, eyes never leaving mine. "Your husband abandoned you, but you're still here, fighting. Your mother doesn't remember you, but you're still paying for her care. You could have taken that money last night and run, but you came back with my jacket, dry cleaned." He smiled slightly. "You're exactly what I need." "And what do you need, Antonio?" I was surprised by my own boldness. His expression shifted, became something darker, more dangerous. "I need someone by my side, someone who sees me as more than the monster everyone thinks I am." He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "Will you take the job, Emma?" Every rational part of my brain screamed to refuse, but standing there, looking into those dark eyes, feeling the pull of something I didn't understand and probably shouldn't want, I found myself nodding. "Yes, I'll take it." His smile was slow, satisfied. "Good. We start tomorrow." As I left the penthouse riding that glass elevator back down to reality, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a deal with the devil, and the worst part? I wasn't sure I cared. The first week working for Antonio Marchetti was nothing like I'd expected. I'd imagined shadowy dealings, dangerous meetings in back alleys, the kind of criminal activity you saw in movies. Instead, I spent my days managing his calendar, screening calls and organizing files in a pristine office 2 floors below his penthouse. The work was demanding but legitimate, or at least it appeared that way on the surface. Antonio was a paradox. In meetings, he was ruthless, his voice cutting through excuses and inefficiency with surgical precision. CEOs twice his age deferred to him. Investors hung on his every word. He commanded respect with a glance, fear with a smile. But with me, he was different. "You haven't eaten," he'd say, appearing at my desk with takeout from restaurants I couldn't pronounce. Take a break. I'm fine, I just need to finish. Emma, that was all it took. My name and his voice, firm but not unkind. And I'd find myself sitting in his office, eating Thai food or Italian or whatever he'd decided I needed that day, while he worked at his desk, occasionally glancing up to make sure I was actually eating. He was always watching me. I felt his gaze during meetings, across conference rooms, through the glass walls of my office. Not in a way that made me uncomfortable, exactly, but in a way that made me hyper-aware of every movement, every breath. By Friday, I'd moved into the apartment he'd arranged, a one-bedroom in a building he owned, 10 blocks from his tower. It was furnished, clean, with heating that actually worked and windows that didn't rattle in the wind. The rent was deducted from my salary at a rate that was almost insulting in its cheapness. "You're doing me a favor," he'd said when I'd protested. "I need you close. For work. For work. Right." On Saturday morning, my second week, I was in the office early, organizing files for an acquisition Antonio was pursuing. The building was empty, silent except for the hum of the heating system. I'd just made coffee when the elevator dinged. Antonio emerged, and my breath caught. He wore jeans. I'd never seen him in anything but suits, and a black sweater that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. His hair was slightly mussed, as if he'd been running his hands through it. "You're here early," he said. "So are you." "I live upstairs. What's your excuse?" But there was amusement in his eyes. "I wanted to finish the Castellano file before Monday." He moved to my desk, standing close enough that I could smell his cologne. He must have just showered. "You don't have to work weekends, Emma." "Neither do you, apparently." That earned me a genuine smile, rare and transformative. For a moment, he looked younger, less burdened. "Touché." He glanced at the files spread across my desk. "You're thorough. I appreciate that." "It's my job." "It's more than that." He picked up one of the files, flipping through it. "You color-coded the contracts by priority. Added notes in the margins about potential issues. This is..." He looked at me, something shifting in his expression. "This is exactly what I needed." The praise shouldn't have warmed me the way it did. "I'm glad I could help. Come upstairs." It wasn't a question. "Mr. Marchetti?" "Antonio. And I'm not asking as your employer. I'm asking as..." He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "As someone who'd like your company." I should have said no. Should have maintained professional boundaries. But I found myself nodding, following him to the elevator. The penthouse was different on a Saturday morning. Softer somehow, with natural light streaming through those floor-to-ceiling windows. Antonio moved to the kitchen, an enormous space with commercial-grade appliances, and started pulling out ingredients. "You cook?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "My mother taught me. She believed everyone should know how to feed themselves." He glanced at me over his shoulder. "Sit. I'm making breakfast." I perched on one of the bar stools, watching as he moved around the kitchen with practiced ease. He was making omelets, I realized, chopping vegetables with the precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Tell me about your mother," I said, then immediately regretted it. "I'm sorry, that's too personal." "No." He paused in his chopping. "It's fine. I want you to know." He resumed his work, his voice taking on a faraway quality. "Her name was Isabella. She came to America from Sicily when she was 19, married my father when she was 20. He worked in construction, died in an accident when I was 7. After that, it was just her, me, and my baby sister Lucia." "Where's your sister now?" His jaw tightened. "Lucia died when she was 16. Ovarian cancer." "Antonio, I'm so sorry." He shrugged, but I could see the pain beneath the gesture. "My mother never recovered. She worked herself to death, literally. Heart attack at 49. I was 23, just starting to make real money, and I couldn't save her." He looked at me then, his eyes dark with old grief. "That's why I helped you that night, because I saw my mother in you, and this time I could do something." The omelet appeared in front of me, perfectly golden, filled with cheese and vegetables. He'd even garnished it with fresh herbs. "This looks amazing," I said quietly. "Eat." We ate in comfortable silence, the city sprawling below us like a concrete jungle we were somehow above. I felt strange being here, in his personal space, seeing this softer side of him. The man who cooked breakfast and mourned his mother seemed impossible to reconcile with the rumors I'd heard. The wolf, the mob boss, the man people feared. "Can I ask you something?" I set down my fork. "Always." "That night at the restaurant, you said I reminded you of someone. But you also said you'd been thinking about me. Why?" Antonio was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes studying me with an intensity that made my pulse race. "Because you're everything they weren't. You're vulnerable, yes, but you're not weak. You're struggling, but you haven't given up. And when you looked at me," he stopped, jaw clenching. "You didn't see the monster. You just saw someone who helped you." "Are you? A monster, I mean." "Yes, no hesitation. I've done things that would horrify you, Emma. I've hurt people. I've destroyed lives. He stood abruptly, moving to the windows. "I'm not a good man." I stood too, moving to stand beside him. Below us, Manhattan teemed with life, millions of people going about their Saturday, oblivious to the man standing above them who apparently held so much power. "Then why did you help me?" I asked quietly. "Because maybe, just for a moment, I wanted to be." He turned to face me fully. "Do you know what it's like, Emma, to be so defined by your worst actions that you forget you're capable of anything else? I think everyone feels that way sometimes." "Not like this." His hand reached out, almost touching my face, then dropped. "I should let you go. Should keep you at a distance, but He exhaled sharply. "I can't seem to make myself do it." My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Antonio." His phone rang, shattering the moment. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor changed, became cold, dangerous. "I have to take this." He answered in Italian, his voice clipped and hard. I caught words I didn't understand, but the tone was clear. Something was wrong. He ended the call and turned to me. "I need you to go back to your apartment. Now, what's happening?" "Nothing you need to worry about," but there was tension in his shoulders, in the way his hand moved to his hip, where I now realized he kept a gun. "Please, Emma. Go home. Lock your doors. Don't answer for anyone except me. You're scaring me." "Good. You should be scared." He moved to the elevator, pressing the button. "Go. I'll call you when it's safe." "Safe from what?" The elevator arrived. He guided me inside, his hand gentle on my elbow despite the urgency in his movements. "Please, just trust me." The doors started to close. I reached out to stop them. "Will you be okay?" Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe, or something warmer. "Don't worry about me, Tesoro. Just stay safe." The doors closed, and I descended back to earth, my heart racing for entirely different reasons now. I spent the rest of Saturday in my apartment, jumping at every sound. Antonio didn't call. By Sunday morning, I was climbing the walls with worry. The news didn't help. A warehouse fire in Brooklyn, a body found in the East River. Nothing explicitly connected to Antonio, but I couldn't shake the feeling that these things were related, that somewhere in the city, he was in danger. Sunday evening, there was a knock at my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Antonio. He was alone, no security in sight, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. There was a cut above his eyebrow, fresh and red. I yanked the door open. "Oh my God, are you—" "I'm fine." He stepped inside, and I closed the door behind him. "I told you not to answer unless it was you. And it is you." I grabbed his arm, pulling him toward my tiny bathroom. "Sit." "Emma." "Sit down, Antonio." He sat on the edge of my bathtub, looking almost amused as I pulled out my first aid kit. I cleaned the cut carefully, trying to ignore how close I was to him, how I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "What happened?" I asked quietly. "Business dispute." "It's handled. Is that what you call it? A business dispute?" "Emma." He caught my wrist, stilling my movements. "I told you, I'm not a good man. I don't care." The words came out before I could stop them. "I was worried about you." His grip on my wrist tightened. "You shouldn't worry about me. Too late." We stared at each other, and the air between us seemed to thicken, become charged with something I didn't want to name. His thumb stroked the inside of my wrist, finding my pulse point. Could he feel how fast my heart was racing? Do you know how hard it's been? His voice was rough. Keeping my distance? Pretending this is just a job? Antonio, I think about you constantly. Every moment you're not with me, I'm wondering what you're doing. If you're safe. If you're thinking about me too. His free hand came up to cup my face. Tell me I'm alone in this. Tell me you don't feel it too. I should have lied. Should have pushed him away. Maintained that professional distance. But I was so tired of lying to myself. You're not alone, I whispered. He pulled me to him, and our lips met in a kiss that was both gentle and desperate. His hand tangled in my hair, and I found myself in his lap, my knees bracketing his thighs. He tasted like coffee and something darker, something dangerous and intoxicating. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. We shouldn't, I started. I know, his forehead rested against mine. But I'm done pretending, Emma. I want you. Not just as my assistant. I want... He exhaled sharply. I want everything. I don't even know what everything means. Neither do I, but I want to find out. He pulled back enough to look at me. Stay with me tonight. Just stay. I need to know you're safe. Safe from what? His expression darkened. From the life I've built. From the people who'd hurt you to hurt me. He stopped, jaw clenching. I'm being selfish. I should send you away. But I can't. I won't. Then don't. I cupped his face, feeling the rough stubble under my palms. I'm choosing this, Antonio. I'm choosing you. You don't know what you're choosing. Then show me. He stood, lifting me with him as if I weighed nothing, and carried me to my bedroom. We fell onto the bed together, and as his hands mapped my body, as his lips found every secret place that made me gasp, I realized that I'd been drowning for so long. And Antonio Marchetti, this dangerous, damaged man, was the only thing keeping me afloat. Later, as we lay tangled together in my too small bed, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my skin, he spoke into the darkness. Your husband, David Sullivan. His voice was quiet. I found him. I went still. What? I had my people look into him, found him in Atlantic City, working as a dealer in a casino. He's been there for months, living off the money he stole from you. Antonio's hand tightened on my hip. Say the word, and I'll handle it. Handle it how? However you want. I can make him pay back every cent. I can make sure he never works again. He stopped. I can make him disappear. The casual way he said it should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a dark satisfaction curl in my chest. I don't want him to disappear, I said quietly. But I want my money back. Every penny. Consider it done. He pressed a kiss to my shoulder. He'll never touch you again, Tesoro. I promise you that. I should have asked what he meant, should have demanded details, but wrapped in his arms, feeling safer than I had in years, I let it go. For tonight, at least, I could pretend this was normal, that I was just a woman falling for a man, and not a waitress entangled with a mobster who'd promised to make my problems disappear. Tomorrow, I'd face the consequences. Tonight, I just wanted to feel wanted. 3 weeks later, I woke up in Antonio's penthouse, wrapped in sheets that probably cost more than my old apartment's monthly rent. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and I could hear Antonio in the kitchen, the familiar sounds of him making coffee. This had become our routine. I'd stay at his place most nights, going through the motions of maintaining my own apartment but rarely sleeping there. He'd cook breakfast while I answered emails. We'd ride to the office together, maintain professional distance during the day, then fall into each other's arms the moment we were alone. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. The money has been returned to your account. Principal plus interest. M. I sat up, heart pounding. Antonio appeared in the doorway, 2 mugs of coffee in hand, wearing nothing but pajama pants that hung low on his hips. You got the text. It wasn't a question. Antonio, what did you do? He set the coffee on the nightstand and sat beside me. I told you. I handled it. How? David Sullivan was persuaded to return what he stole, with interest for the inconvenience. His tone was casual, but there was steel underneath. He's also signed papers relinquishing any claim to you, your property, or your finances. The divorce will be finalized by the end of the month. I should have been grateful. I was grateful. But the ease with which he'd done it, the power he wielded so casually, it was overwhelming. You didn't hurt him, did you? Antonio's jaw tightened. Would you care if I did? I don't know. The honesty felt like a confession. I should care. I should be horrified. But mostly I just feel... I stopped, trying to find the words. Free? He suggested softly. Yes. I looked at him. This man who'd upended my entire world in a matter of weeks. Is that wrong? No, Tesoro. It's human. He pulled me against him, and I breathed in his scent, cedar and coffee and home. You've been a prisoner for so long, to poverty, to David, to circumstance. I'm just giving you the keys. And what do you get in return? His hand cupped my face, tilting it up so I had to meet his eyes. You. I get you. Before I could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at it, and his expression hardened. I have to take this. He answered in Italian, his voice clipped. I'd learned to recognize certain words. Problema, adesso, attento. Problem, now, careful. He ended the call and stood. Get dressed. We have a situation. What kind of situation? The kind that requires you by my side. He was already moving to the closet, pulling out one of the designer dresses he'd bought me. Wear this. We leave in 20 minutes. The restaurant was in Little Italy, an old establishment that looked family-owned and probably was, by Antonio's family, in whatever sense that meant. We arrived in the black SUV with tinted windows, flanked by 2 more vehicles. Marco, Antonio's head of security, opened my door. Stay close to Mr. Marchetti, he said quietly. Inside, the restaurant was empty except for 5 men seated at a large table in the back. They all stood when Antonio entered, respect and wariness in equal measure on their faces. Gentlemen, Antonio said, his hand firm on my lower back. This is Emma Sullivan, my assistant. A gray-haired man with sharp eyes studied me. Your assistant? Or something more, Antonio. Careful, Vincent. Antonio's voice was soft, dangerous. Choose your next words carefully. Vincent held up his hands in mock surrender. No disrespect intended. I'm just trying to understand the situation. The situation is simple. Emma is under my protection. Anyone who touches her, threatens her, or even looks at her wrong answers to me. Understood? A murmur of agreement rippled through the group. We sat, and a waiter appeared immediately with wine and antipasti. The conversation that followed was a bizarre mix of business and threat, discussions of territories and shipments couched in euphemisms I was probably better off not understanding. But I understood the dynamics. These men feared Antonio, and they resented him for it. I hear congratulations are in order, said a younger man with slicked back hair. The Castellano acquisition went through. That's a lot of real estate, Antonio. A lot of power. It's business, Sal. Business. Sal laughed, but there was no humor in it. Everything's business with you. Even her, I bet. Antonio went very still. What did you just say? I said... In a movement too fast to track, Antonio had Sal by the throat, lifting him partially out of his chair. The other men didn't move, didn't intervene. They just watched. Apologize to the lady, Antonio said quietly. I didn't mean... Sal choked out. Apologize. I'm sorry. Sal's eyes flicked to me, terrified. I'm sorry, Miss Sullivan. Antonio held him for another beat, then released him. Sal collapsed back into his chair, gasping. Anyone else have comments about my personal life? Antonio looked around the table. Silence. Good. Now let's talk about the real reason we're here. He launched into a discussion about consolidating territories, about negotiations with families in New Jersey, about things I barely comprehended, but I understood one thing clearly. Antonio Marchetti was in charge. These men might not like it, but they respected it. The meeting ended an hour later. As we left, Vincent pulled Antonio aside. A word? Antonio nodded to Marco, who stayed close to me while Antonio and Vincent talked in low voices near the door. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but Vincent kept glancing at me, his expression unreadable. Finally, Antonio returned. His jaw was tight, a muscle jumping beneath his skin. What was that about? I asked once we were in the SUV. Nothing you need to worry about. Antonio, Vincent thinks I'm weak. He stared out the window, his profile sharp in the afternoon light. He thinks caring about you makes me vulnerable, that it's a liability. Is he right? I don't know. He turned to look at me, and the raw honesty in his eyes made my breath catch. You are my weakness, Emma. You're the only thing that could be used against me. And that terrifies me. Then maybe... I swallowed hard. Maybe we should stop. Maybe this is too dangerous. Do you want to stop? No. The admission came out as barely a whisper. God help me, no. He pulled me to him, kissing me with a desperation that spoke of fear and possession in equal measure. Then we don't stop. We have to be more careful. But careful wasn't enough. 2 nights later, I was leaving my old apartment. I'd gone to pick up the last of my belongings, when a car pulled up beside me. 3 men got out, their intentions clear in their body language. I ran. I made it maybe 20 feet before they grabbed me, a hand over my mouth silencing my scream. They dragged me into an alley, and terror unlike anything I'd ever known flooded my system. Message for your boyfriend, one of them said. He was young, maybe mid-20s, with cold eyes. Tell him Vincent says hello. The punch caught me in the stomach, driving the air from my lungs. I doubled over, and another blow caught me across the face. The world spun, pain exploding across my cheekbone. They were going to kill me. The thought was strangely distant, almost clinical. Then came the sound of screeching tires, running footsteps, and gunshots that echoed off the buildings. I hit the ground, covering my head. Shouting in Italian, more gunshots, then silence. Strong hands lifted me gently. Emma. Emma, look at me. Antonio. His face was pale, eyes wild with something I'd never seen before. Fear. I'm okay, I managed to say, even though my face was already swelling, my ribs screaming. You're not okay, you're... His hand came away from my face covered in blood. My blood. The rage that crossed his features was terrifying. Marco, get the doctor, now. The men, I started, are being dealt with. His voice was flat, final. You're never staying at that apartment again. You're moving in with me, permanently. Antonio, this is not a discussion, Emma. You were almost killed because of me, because Vincent wanted to send a message. So the message I'm sending back is this. You're mine. Completely and utterly mine. Under my protection, in my home, by my side. Always. He lifted me carefully, carrying me to the SUV. Inside, I saw Marco on the phone, speaking rapidly in Italian. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of the alley. 2 bodies, Antonio's men standing over them. Did you kill them? I whispered. Not yet. Antonio's jaw was granite, but I will. The doctor arrived at the penthouse within minutes. A middle-aged woman who asked no questions and tended to my injuries with professional efficiency. Bruised ribs, a split lip, a black eye that would be spectacular by morning. Nothing permanent, she assured me. Nothing that wouldn't heal, but something had changed. I could see it in Antonio's eyes as he paced the living room, phone pressed to his ear, issuing orders in that deadly quiet voice that was more frightening than any shout. When the doctor left, he came to sit beside me on the couch. His hands were shaking slightly as he touched my face, tracing the bruises with infinite gentleness. I should have protected you better, he said. I should have. This isn't your fault. It's entirely my fault. Vincent was right. You are my weakness, and he exploited it. His eyes met mine, and they were black with rage, but he made a mistake. He thought hurting you would make me back down. Instead, he stopped, jaw clenching. Instead, he just showed me exactly how far I'm willing to go. What are you going to do? Whatever I have to. He pulled me against him, careful of my injuries. Vincent wants a war? He'll get one. But when it's over, you'll be safe. I promise you that. I should have been horrified, should have recognized this as the moment to walk away, to return to my simple, safe, poverty-stricken life. But as I sat there in Antonio Marchetti's arms, feeling his heart race beneath my palm, I realized something. I didn't want safe anymore. I wanted this. The danger, the passion, the feeling of being so completely claimed that even fear couldn't touch it. I love you, I said into the darkness. I know I shouldn't. I know this is crazy, but I love you. He went very still. Then his arms tightened around me, almost crushing. "Say it again. I love you, Antonio Marchetti." "Emma." My name was a prayer, a curse, a benediction. "I've loved you since that first night. Since you stood there in your ruined uniform and still had the strength to look me in the eye. You're everything I don't deserve and everything I need." He tilted my face up, kissing me with a gentleness that belied the violence I knew he was capable of. "And I will burn this entire city to the ground before I let anyone hurt you again." Outside, Manhattan glittered in the darkness, oblivious to the war that was about to unfold. But inside this penthouse, wrapped in each other's arms, we were untouchable. Or at least, that's what we told ourselves. The war lasted 3 days. I spent them in the penthouse, surrounded by armed guards, watching the news reports of fires and arrests and bodies found in places they shouldn't be. Antonio would leave for hours at a time, returning with blood on his clothes and death in his eyes. But he'd always come to me, let me clean him up, hold him until the shaking stopped. On the third night, it ended. I was in the kitchen making tea, something mundane to ground myself, when Antonio walked in. His suit was immaculate, no blood this time, but his eyes were haunted. "It's done," he said simply. "Vincent?" Gone. His operation dismantled, his territory absorbed, his men given a choice, work for me or leave the city. He moved to the windows, staring out at the city he'd just reshaped through violence. "It's over, Emma." I set down the tea and went to him. "At what cost?" "Everything." He turned to face me, and I saw the weight of what he'd done written in every line of his face. "I killed 3 men myself, ordered the deaths of 6 more, destroyed families, ended careers, rewrote the power structure of this entire city, all because someone hurt you. I'm sorry. Don't." He pulled me to him fiercely. "Don't apologize for making me human, for making me care about something more than power and fear. You didn't make me a monster, Emma. You made me remember I was a man. What happens now?" "Now?" A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Now we live. Really live. No more hiding, no more pretending this is just professional. You're mine, and everyone in this city knows it. That sounds dangerous. It is. But I'm the most dangerous thing in this city, Tesoro. And you're under my protection." He cupped my face, thumbs tracing my cheekbones. The bruises had faded to yellow-green, almost gone. "No one will touch you again. I've made sure of that." Over the next weeks, life found a new normal. I moved into the penthouse completely, my old apartment sold. That chapter of my life closed. Antonio was true to his word. I was by his side constantly, not just as his assistant, but as his partner in every sense. The money from David went toward my mother's care. I visited her upstate every Sunday, and Antonio always came with me, sitting patiently while I talked to a woman who didn't recognize me, but seemed to enjoy my company nonetheless. "She looks happy," Antonio said one afternoon as we drove back to the city. "That's because of you, Emma. You gave her that. We gave her that." I took his hand. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "You could have. You're stronger than you know." He brought my hand to his lips. "But I'm glad you don't have to do it alone anymore." 6 months after that night at Romano's Bistro, Antonio took me back to the restaurant. It had been renovated, upgraded, transformed into something elegant and expensive. Danny was still bartending, but he wore a suit now and worked in what had become one of the most exclusive establishments in the city. We sat at table 12, that same corner booth where everything had started. "Do you remember that night?" Antonio asked. "Every second of it." I traced the rim of my wineglass. "You terrified me." "I still terrify you sometimes, yes. There was no point in denying it, but I love you anyway, maybe because of it." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "I need to tell you something. About your husband. About David." My stomach clenched. "What about him?" "When I had my people track him down, they found something else. He wasn't just a deadbeat who stole from you and ran." Antonio's jaw tightened. "He was working for Vincent. The whole marriage was a setup. Vincent wanted information on someone, and David was supposed to get close to their daughter. But he got the wrong woman. He got you instead." The world tilted. "What?" Your maiden name is Sullivan. Vincent's target had a daughter named Emma Sullivan. Different woman, but same name. David realized his mistake after you were married, but by then, he was in too deep. So he took what he could and ran. So I couldn't finish the sentence. Collateral damage in someone else's game. Yes. Antonio's grip on my hand tightened. But Emma, listen to me. What happened after? Us. This. That wasn't part of anyone's plan. That was real. That is real. I processed this, the final piece of the puzzle clicking into place. My entire marriage, my entire adult life up to that point, had been a lie. A case of mistaken identity that had nearly destroyed me. Where's David now? I asked quietly. In witness protection. He testified against Vincent's organization, gave us everything we needed to dismantle it completely. In exchange, Antonio paused. In exchange, he lives. That was the deal I made. You let him live. For you. Because you asked me not to make him disappear. Because you're good, Emma. In a way I'll never be. And I need that goodness to remind me I'm still human. Tears burned my eyes, but I blinked them back. I don't know what to say. Say you'll marry me. I froze. What? Antonio slid out of the booth and knelt beside the table. From his pocket, he pulled a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, a single diamond, brilliant and perfect, set in platinum. Emma Sullivan, you walked into my life broken and beautiful, and you made me want to be better. You made me feel things I thought I'd lost the capacity for. You're my conscience, my heart, my salvation. His voice was steady, but his eyes shone with emotion. Marry me. Not because I'm powerful or because I can provide for you, but because I love you more than I thought possible. Because you're the only person who's ever looked at the monster and seen the man. Because I want to spend every day, for the rest of my life, proving that I deserve you. The restaurant had gone silent. I was vaguely aware of other diners watching. Of Danny behind the bar with tears in his eyes, of Marco and the other guards trying and failing to look professional. Yes. The word came out as barely a whisper, so I said it again, louder. Yes, Antonio, I'll marry you. He slipped the ring onto my finger, a perfect fit, of course, and pulled me to him, kissing me as the restaurant erupted in applause. We were married 3 months later in a small ceremony at a cathedral in Little Italy. My mother was there, lucid for the first time in years, tears streaming down her face as Antonio and I exchanged vows. She wouldn't remember it tomorrow, but she was there today, and that was enough. The reception was at Antonio's restaurant. Our restaurant now. The guest list was an eclectic mix of Antonio's business associates, my few remaining friends from my old life, and a surprising number of people I'd met through Antonio's charitable work. Because that was the other thing that had changed. Antonio had started using his resources for good. Funding shelters, supporting small businesses, helping people the way no one had helped his mother. You're changing him, Danny said as we danced. Antonio had insisted on dancing with everyone at the reception, but he kept glancing back at me, making sure I was never out of his sight. I don't think I'm changing him. I think I'm just reminding him who he always was underneath, maybe. But Emma... Danny's expression grew serious. Thank you. For saving him. He saved me first. You saved each other. That's what makes this work. Antonio appeared then, cutting in smoothly. My turn, he said, pulling me into his arms. We moved together across the dance floor, and everything else faded away. It was just us, just this moment, just the feeling of being exactly where we were supposed to be. Happy? He murmured against my hair. Impossibly. Good. His arms tightened around me. Because you're stuck with me now, Mrs. Marchetti. Mrs. Marchetti. The name still felt surreal, like a life I'd never dared dream of. I love you, I said. Even though you're terrifying and dangerous, and probably shouldn't be trusted with anything breakable. He laughed. A real laugh that transformed his entire face. I love you too, Tesoro, even though you're stubborn and reckless, and have absolutely no sense of self-preservation. We're quite a pair. We're perfect. He kissed me softly. You're my redemption, Emma. my second chance. And I will spend every day of the rest of my life making sure you never regret taking a chance on the monster in the corner booth. You're not a monster. I am. But I'm your monster, and that makes all the difference. 5 years later, I stood in the nursery of our home. Not the penthouse, but a brownstone in Brooklyn with a backyard and neighbors who baked cookies, and watched Antonio rock our daughter to sleep. Isabella, named for his mother, had his dark eyes and my stubborn chin. She was 6 months old, and already had her father wrapped around her tiny finger. She's asleep, Antonio whispered. Carefully laying her in the crib, we stood there together, watching her breathe, this tiny, perfect thing we'd created. Outside, the city hummed with life. The same city where Antonio still wielded considerable power, still commanded respect and fear in equal measure. But here, in this room, he was just a father, awed by the responsibility of this small life. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Choosing this life? Choosing me?" I turned to face him. This man who'd terrified me and saved me and loved me with an intensity that still sometimes took my breath away. His hair was graying slightly at the temples now, and there were new lines around his eyes from smiling more. He was still dangerous, still powerful, still capable of things that would horrify most people. But he was also mine. "Never," I said, "not once. Even knowing what I am, what I've done. Especially knowing." I took his hand, lacing our fingers together. "You're not defined by your worst moments, Antonio. You're defined by what you choose to do after them. And you chose love. You chose family. You chose to be better. I chose you." Everything else followed. We stood there in the darkened nursery, our daughter sleeping peacefully, and I thought about that night 5 years ago. About the scared, broken woman in a stained uniform who'd been mocked by cruel boys. About the dangerous man in the corner booth who'd decided, for whatever reason, to intervene. I thought about all the ways our lives could have gone differently if those boys hadn't been so cruel. If Antonio hadn't been there, if I'd said no to the job, to the relationship, to the life that had unfolded since. But I hadn't said no. I'd said yes, to the job, to the risk, to the terrifying, intoxicating, impossible love of a man who was both monster and savior, and I would say yes again, 1,000 times over. I would choose this life, choose him. Because sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes the monster in the corner booth is actually your fairy tale ending. Sometimes the most dangerous choice is the one that saves you. Antonio pulled me against him, and we swayed together in the darkness, dancing to music only we could hear. Outside, the city sparkled with a million stories, a million lives intersecting and diverging in the endless dance of existence. But this story, our story, had found its resolution. Not in perfection, because nothing about us was perfect, but in acceptance, in love, in the simple truth that sometimes broken people can heal each other. I'd walked into Romano's bistro a broken, invisible woman. I'd walked out claimed by a monster who taught me I was worth fighting for. And now, years later, I stood in a home filled with love, married to a man who'd quite literally remade his world to keep me safe, raising a daughter who would grow up knowing she was precious and protected and fiercely, impossibly loved. The waitress and the mob boss, the vulnerability and the power, the woman who'd been nothing and the man who'd been too much. We'd found each other in the darkness, and we'd chosen to build a life in the light, and that, in the end, was the only resolution that mattered. Antonio pressed a kiss to my temple. "Come to bed, Tesoro. Tomorrow's another day." "Tomorrow and all the days after," I agreed. We left the nursery, leaving the door cracked so we could hear Isabella if she woke. In our bedroom, decorated with both his expensive taste and my insistence on comfort, we fell into bed together, exhausted and content. "I love you," he murmured, already half asleep. "I love you too." And as I drifted off, wrapped in the arms of the man who'd saved me and claimed me and loved me beyond reason, I thought, this is what happily ever after looks like. Not perfect, not easy, but real, and real was everything I'd ever needed.